Concrete Labyrinth. This is a true story. My name is David Nguyen. I'm 27 years old and I've been dead for 3 weeks. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean my body, my actual physical body was lying in my Koreatown apartment, eyes open, heart barely beating, while my consciousness wandered through a concrete hell that shouldn't exist. The coroner's preliminary report said unexplained coma. My landlord thought I'd overdosed. My mother thought I'd tried to kill myself. They were all wrong. I was trapped in a place between sleep and death, a labyrinth made of gray concrete and lost souls. And I'm only telling you this now because last night I heard the dripping again, in my walls, the same sound that echoed through those corridors. And I know with the certainty of someone who's already died once that it's coming back for me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it really began. November 15th, 2020. The 183rd day I couldn't sleep. The alarm screamed at 4:47 in the morning. I say screamed because after 6 months of insomnia, every sound becomes violence. The iPhone's default chime, something Apple's sound designers probably crafted to be gentle, progressive, humane, felt like ice picks driven directly into my eardrums. I reached for it in the dark. My hand shook. It had been shaking for weeks now, a fine tremor that never quite stopped, like my nervous system was a guitar string tuned too tight, vibrating even in stillness. The phone screen burned my retinas. Sleep tracker app, 23 minutes. A new record low. 6 months ago, before the insomnia started, I averaged 7 hours. Now I was grateful for 23 minutes of unconsciousness, though calling it sleep felt generous. It was more like my brain briefly gave up trying to stay online, a forced reboot that lasted barely long enough to process a single dream fragment before crashing back to wakefulness. I sat up in bed. The studio apartment materialized around me in the pre-dawn darkness. 400 square feet of my life condensed into a space barely larger than a prison cell. The streetlight from Olympic Boulevard filtered through my blackout curtains, which weren't actually blocking out anything. They just made the orange sodium glow slightly less aggressive, transforming it into a sick amber that painted everything the color of jaundice. My reflection caught in the window glass. Even in silhouette, I looked wrong. The insomnia had carved me hollow. I'd lost 15 pounds since September, weight I couldn't afford to lose. My cheekbones cast shadows I'd never seen before. My eyes sat in pools of darkness that makeup couldn't hide. Not that I bothered trying anymore. The apartment smelled like kimchi from the hallway, underlaid with the chemical pine scent of whatever industrial cleaner the landlord used, mixed with the sour, sweet smell of the garbage chute located directly next to my door. I'd stopped noticing these smells months ago, the way you stop noticing the hum of a refrigerator. But at 4:47 in the morning, with 23 minutes of sleep in my system and a 12-hour delivery shift ahead of me, every sensory input felt like an assault. I stood up. My knees popped. I was 27 years old and my body sounded like a Halloween skeleton. The wooden floor was cold under my feet. The landlord kept the heat low to save money, which meant my third-floor studio was consistently 62 degrees in November. I shuffled to the bathroom, one hand on the wall for balance. The microsleeps had started 2 weeks ago, moments where my brain would shut down for 2-3 seconds while I was standing, walking, driving. Terrifying little pockets of non-existence that I couldn't predict or control. I splashed water on my face. The bathroom mirror showed me what I'd become. 27, but I looked 40. Vietnamese-American second-generation college dropout, gig economy worker insomniac. The descending spiral of my identity, each label a step down. My eyes were bloodshot, the whites turned pink from burst capillaries. My hair stuck up in greasy spikes. I couldn't remember the last time I'd washed it. 2 days, 3 time had become elastic hours, stretching into eternities during the night, then compressing into frantic blurs during the day. I turned on the shower, waiting for the water to heat up. The building was old, built in the 70s, and the plumbing groaned like something dying. While I waited, I opened my phone and checked my earnings from yesterday. DoorDash, $47. Postmates, $32. Amazon Flex, $55. $134 for 11 hours of work minus gas, minus the parking ticket I'd gotten in West Hollywood, minus the coffee I'd needed to stay awake. Rent was 2 months overdue. My landlord, a Korean woman in her 60s who owned half the buildings on Vermont Avenue, had been patient so far. But patience has limits, and I'd reached hers last week when she'd taped a 48-hour notice to my door. The water never got hot. It went from freezing to lukewarm, and that was the best I'd get. I stepped in anyway, gasping as the tepid stream hit my skin. I washed quickly, mechanically, trying not to think about the fact that this might be one of my last showers in this apartment. Homelessness loomed on the horizon like a storm front I could see but couldn't outrun. By 5:30, I was dressed jeans, DoorDash t-shirt, face mask dangling from my ear. November 2020. COVID's second wave was building. Los Angeles County had just re-entered modified lockdown. The city felt simultaneously empty and claustrophobic, like being alone in a crowded room. I grabbed my keys, my phone, my insulated delivery bag. The hallway outside my apartment was dim lit by flickering fluorescents that the landlord never replaced. I could hear the couple in 3B fighting in Spanish, their voices rising and falling in a rhythm I'd learned to tune out. Above me in 4C, someone was playing League of Legends. I could hear the distinctive sounds of abilities firing, the click, click, click of frantic mousework. It was 5:30 in the morning and someone was gaming. Insomnia took many forms. The elevator was broken again, so I took the stairs. 3 flights down my legs, already tired, my body running on fumes and caffeine and nothing else. Outside, Los Angeles was still dark. Olympic Boulevard stretched east and west, dotted with red taillights and the green neon of 24-hour restaurants that somehow survived the pandemic. Korean BBQ joints with their windows papered over, a 7-Eleven that never closed. A coin laundromat where I'd seen the same homeless man sleeping in front of the dryers for 3 months straight. My car was parked 2 blocks away. Street parking in Koreatown was blood sport. The Civic was 12 years old, bought used from a family friend running on hope and synthetic oil. I unlocked it, slid into the driver's seat, and sat for a moment in the darkness. This was the worst part of the day. The moment before starting when I had to confront the reality of the next 12 hours, driving in traffic, finding parking, running upstairs with bags of food, smiling behind my mask at customers who sometimes tipped, sometimes didn't, sometimes reported me for being too slow. Even though I'd driven across the city in 20 minutes, I turned the key. The engine coughed, hesitated, caught. The dashboard lit up, check engine light on as always, gas tank half empty. I pulled out onto Olympic, merging into the pre-dawn traffic of early shift workers, delivery drivers, people going home from night shifts. The radio played news I didn't want to hear. COVID cases rising. Unemployment still catastrophic. Small businesses closing. I turned it off and drove in silence, broken only by the occasional notification ping from my phone mounted on the dashboard. New order pickup at McDonald's on Western, delivered to Los Feliz. $6 payout, 3-mile drive. I accepted it. Then another ping. Stacked order pickup at the same McDonald's, delivered to Silver Lake. $4. I accepted that too. The algorithm was bleeding me dry, but I couldn't afford to be selective. The McDonald's was bright and empty at 5:45 a.m. I walked in, gave the code to the worker behind the counter, a tired-looking woman in her 50s who barely looked at me and waited. The fluorescent lights made everything look sterile and harsh. I could see my reflection in the metallic surfaces, ghostly and wrong. My hands were shaking worse now. I shoved them in my pockets. The food came. 2 bags. I checked the orders against my phone, confirmed everything was there, and walked back to my car. First delivery in Los Feliz, an apartment complex with a gate code that didn't work. I called the customer. No answer. I waited the required 5 minutes, took a photo of the food at the gate, and left it there. The app dinged $2 tip. Better than nothing. Second delivery in Silver Lake. This one went smoothly, contactless delivery to a front porch, food left in the designated spot photo, taken $5 tip. I was up to $17 for an hour of work. At this rate, I'd make maybe $100 today if I worked 12 hours straight. The sun was rising now, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if I'd had the capacity to appreciate beauty. Instead, I just felt the weight of the day ahead, hour after hour of this mechanical process, this reduction of human existence to GPS coordinates and dollar amounts. By 9 a.m., I'd completed 11 deliveries. My back hurt from getting in and out of the car. My legs hurt from running upstairs. My head hurt from the combination of sleep deprivation and caffeine. I'd already consumed 2 energy drinks and a large coffee, my heart racing at speeds that probably weren't healthy. I pulled into a parking spot near MacArthur Park to take a break. The park was full of tents now, a sprawling encampment of people who'd lost housing during the pandemic. I thought about my 2-month overdue rent and wondered how long before I joined them. My phone buzzed. Not a delivery notification this time. A text from my mom. "David, are you okay? You haven't called in 2 weeks. Your father and I are worried." Guilt stabbed through me. My parents, immigrants, who'd built a small faux restaurant in San Gabriel from nothing, who'd worked 7 days a week for 20 years to send me to college, who'd watched their business collapse in March when the shutdown hit. They were in their 60s, struggling to keep the restaurant alive, and here I was, their only son. A college dropout, working gig economy jobs, and slowly disintegrating from insomnia. I typed back, "I'm fine, Mom, just busy. I'll call this weekend." A lie. I wasn't fine. But what was I supposed to say? That I hadn't slept more than an hour in 6 months, that I was seeing things in my peripheral vision, shadow people that disappeared when I looked directly at them? That 3 days ago I'd nearly caused an accident on the I-10 because I'd had a 3-second microsleep at 60 miles per hour? My parents had enough problems. They didn't need mine. Another notification delivery request. I accepted it and pulled back onto the road. The day blurred. Pick up, deliver, repeat. Restaurants blended together. Addresses became just numbers. Customers were voices through intercoms or masked faces answering doors. The city scrolled past my windows like a video game level I was grinding through for experience points that never came. By 3 p.m., I was on my 19th delivery and running on pure adrenaline. My vision had started doing the thing where edges got fuzzy, where I'd blink and lose a second or two. Dangerous. I knew it was dangerous, but I couldn't stop. Rent was due, bills were due, my phone plan was about to be shut off. Everything was always due. I was heading south on Vermont when I felt it, the sudden, overwhelming wave of exhaustion that signaled a micro-sleep coming. I had maybe 5 seconds of warning. I pulled into a gas station parking lot, threw the car into park, and the world went black. When my eyes opened again, 3 seconds had passed. 3 seconds of nothing. My heart hammered in my chest. That was too close. If I'd been on the freeway, if there'd been a pedestrian, I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. A knock on my window made me jump. A man stood there, maybe in his 60s, wearing a Dodgers cap and a concerned expression. I rolled down the window. "You okay, son?" he asked. "You looked like you were having a seizure or something." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "Just tired." "You don't look fine. You look like you haven't slept in a month." He studied me with the directness of someone who'd seen some things in life. "When's the last time you got a full night's rest?" I almost laughed. "When was the last time? June, maybe? Late June, before the insomnia started, for reasons I still didn't understand. Before sleep became this elusive thing I chased every night and never caught." "I'm fine," I repeated, "but thank you." He looked like he wanted to say more, but instead just nodded and walked away. I watched him go, then checked my phone. 3:15 p.m. 9 more hours until I could go home and lie in bed not sleeping. The rest of the afternoon melted into evening. The sun set, the city lit up. I kept driving, kept delivering a ghost haunting Los Angeles in a 12-year-old Civic. By 8 p.m., I'd made $132. Not enough. Never enough. But my body was shutting down my eyes, burning my thoughts, fragmenting. I needed to go home. The drive back to Koreatown felt eternal. Traffic was lighter now, but every red light was a battle to keep my eyes open. I slapped my face, turned the radio up loud, rolled down the windows to let the cold November air blast me. I made it. Parked 3 blocks from my apartment. Sat in the car for 5 minutes, gathering the energy to move. When I finally climbed the stairs to my apartment, my legs were shaking. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and the smell of kimchi and pine sol greeted me like old enemies. I dropped my keys on the counter, peeled off my shoes, looked at the clock, 8:43 p.m. I should eat something. I couldn't remember my last meal. But the thought of food made me nauseous, so I just grabbed a glass of water from the tap and drank it standing at the sink. The apartment was silent. The couple below had stopped fighting. The gamer above had stopped gaming. For a brief moment, everything was still. That's when I heard it drip, 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 coming from the bathroom. I set down my glass and walked slowly to the bathroom door. The sound was clear now, steady, rhythmic, water hitting porcelain. I pushed open the door and turned on the light. The faucet wasn't running. I checked under the sink. Dry, the toilet, fine. But the sound continued. Drip, drip, drip. I pressed my ear against the wall. The sound was coming from inside, from the pipes, maybe from somewhere in the building's ancient plumbing. I knocked on the wall. The sound stopped. Silence. I waited, holding my breath. Nothing. I turned to leave and the sound resumed. Drip, drip. Old building, I said aloud to myself, my voice sounding strange in the empty apartment. Just old pipes, the landlord's problem. I went back to the kitchen trying to ignore it, but the sound followed me, seemed to echo from every wall, from inside the structure of the building itself. I grabbed my laptop from the desk and opened it, thinking I'd watch something, anything to distract myself from the dripping. The screen's glow illuminated the dark apartment. I opened Reddit, my nightly ritual, scrolled through Insomnia, reading posts from other people who couldn't sleep, a community of the perpetually exhausted. At 11 p.m. I was still scrolling when a comment caught my eye, posted 3 minutes ago by a user called Midnight Watcher. If you're reading this at 3 a.m. and you haven't slept in months, you're not alone. There's a reason. Click here. It wasn't 3 a.m. Yet, but close enough, my cursor hovered over the link. Common sense said, don't click random links from strangers. 6 months of insomnia said, what did I have to lose? I clicked. The link led to a Discord invite. Server name, The Midnight Circle. 47 members online. I stared at the Accept Invite button. And that's when the apartment went completely silent. The dripping stopped, the hum of my refrigerator stopped, the distant traffic noise from Olympic Boulevard stopped. Even my laptop fan seemed to go quiet. Complete. Auditory. Void. I looked up from the screen. The silence was so total it hurt my ears, that pressure you feel when everything cancels out at once. Then I heard it. Not from the bathroom this time, from the walls, all around me. Drip, drip, drip. Like the apartment itself was weeping. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor, and the sound stopped again. I turned in a slow circle. My shadow stretched across the wall in the laptop's glow, elongated and wrong. For just a moment, I swear this is true, I saw a second shadow behind mine, taller, thinner, standing where no one could possibly be. I spun around. The apartment was empty. When I looked back at the wall, only my shadow remained. My heart was hammering. Sleep deprivation, hallucinations, I told myself. Dr. Kim on the Discord forums had explained it. Hypnagogic hallucinations, your brain trying to dream while you're awake, completely normal with severe sleep deprivation. But my hands were shaking worse now, and not from the tremors. I sat back down at the laptop. The Discord invite was still on screen, waiting. 47 members online at 11 p.m. on a Friday night in November 2020. 47 other people who couldn't sleep. I clicked Accept Invite. The server loaded. Channel names appeared: hash witching hour, hash remedies. Tried hash success stories, hash vent. I clicked on hash witching hour and scrolled through recent messages. The timestamps were all between 2 and 5 a.m. posts from people in different time zones, all awake when they should be sleeping. Day 214. My kids asked why Mommy's eyes are always red. I told them allergies. They're 6 and 8. They know I'm lying. Somnus Linda posted at 2:47 a.m. Yo, anyone else seeing shit that's not there, like shadows moving when nothing's there? Nate Brooks posted at 3:02 a.m. Nathan, you're experiencing hypnagogic hallucinations. It's normal with severe sleep deprivation. Your brain is trying to dream while you're awake. Dr. Sarah K. posted at 3:15 a.m. I kept scrolling, reading months of messages from people whose lives had been consumed by sleeplessness. It felt like looking into a mirror that reflected 47 versions of my desperation. The laptop screen flickered, just once. In that moment of darkness, my reflection appeared in the black screen, and behind it, that same tall, thin shadow. I spun around again, nothing. The apartment was empty. Of course it was empty. I lived alone. I was alone. Just me and the insomnia and the hallucinations that came with it. I turned back to the laptop and started typing in hash witching hour new here, day 183, maybe more, lost count. Does anyone actually sleep in this server, or are we all just pretending? The response was immediate. Welcome, David. We don't sleep. We wait until we find the cure. And I think I found it. Midnight Watcher. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A cure for insomnia from an internet stranger. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was a scam, a pyramid scheme, snake oil in digital form. But 6 months of 23-minute nights had eroded my rationality down to nothing. What cure? I typed. The response took a minute. I watched the typing indicator pulse. Meet us tomorrow night, 6 p.m., Clifton's Cafeteria, parking lot downtown. I'll bring enough for everyone. Free. We're family now. I stared at the message. Meet strangers from the internet in a parking lot. Every safety lesson I'd ever learned said no. But the word cure glowed on my screen like a promise. And I realized, sitting there in my dark apartment with the dripping in the walls and the shadows that moved when they shouldn't and the weight of 183 sleepless nights pressing down on me, that I was willing to do almost anything for the possibility of rest. I'll be there, I typed. The moment I hit send, the dripping stopped. The apartment fell silent again, but this time it felt different. Not empty, occupied. Like something had been waiting for my answer and was now satisfied. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., I would meet these strangers. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. I would find out if there really was a cure. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., my life would change forever. I just didn't know yet that the change would cost me everything. The parking lot of Clifton's Cafeteria looked like a stage set for the end of the world. The historic building stood dark and boarded up, its Art Deco facade covered in plywood and fading COVID closure notices. Downtown Los Angeles stretched behind it in vertical layers of glass and concrete, the sky caught between day and night, bleeding orange and purple through the smog. I arrived at 5:53 p.m., 7 minutes early. Nervous habit. The kind of punctuality that comes from a childhood of immigrant parents who treated being late like a moral failing. There were already people there. I could see them in the dim light scattered across the parking lot in a loose constellation, each person standing exactly 6 feet from the next. Social distancing had become muscle memory. By November 2020, our bodies automatically calibrating the distance of potential contagion. 12 people. I counted them as I got out of my Civic, my phone and keys clutched in one hand. 12 strangers I'd agreed to meet based on a Discord message, and 6 months of desperation. They all looked the same way I felt. Exhausted, hollowed out, like we'd been carved from the inside and only the shells remained held upright by caffeine and stubbornness. A woman stepped forward. Mid-40s Korean with graying hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore a medical mask and held a canvas tote bag against her chest like it contained something precious. "David?" she asked. Her voice was warm despite the exhaustion in it, the kind of warmth that comes from someone who's chosen to be kind even when kindness costs them something. "Linda," I guessed. She nodded. "Somnus Linda. I recognize your profile picture from Discord." Up close, I could see what the insomnia had done to her. The skin around her eyes had that crepe paper texture that comes from chronic dehydration. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her grip on the tote bag. But when she smiled, it reached her eyes, and I felt something in my chest unclench slightly. Human connection. I'd forgotten what that felt like. "Everyone's here," she said, gesturing to the scattered group. "Well, almost everyone. We're waiting for Sarah Dr. Kim. She's coming from a shift at Cedars." I looked at the others. There was a young guy, early 20s, skinny as a rail, wearing a black hoodie despite the mild weather. He kept shifting his weight from foot to foot, unable to stand still. Nathan, I guessed. Nate Brooks. An older man with a gray beard stood near a concrete pillar writing in a small notebook. James Morrison. Temporal drift. He had the look of someone who'd been educated once before life had sanded down all the edges. The rest were faces I didn't recognize from the Discord, a young Latina woman who couldn't have been older than 19, staring at her shoes like they might save her. A black man in his 30s still wearing a suit from some office job. An elderly Korean couple holding hands. A Mexican construction worker with paint-stained jeans. A white woman covered in tattoos. An Asian guy who had the pallor of someone who spent too much time indoors. We were a cross-section of Los Angeles insomnia, different ages, different backgrounds, united by the same problem: none of us could sleep. "Is it real?" The question came from the young guy in the hoodie, Nathan. His voice cracked slightly. "The herb thing, is it actually real or is this some kind of scam?" Linda set down her tote bag and pulled off her mask briefly. "Look at my hands." She held them out, palms down, steady, completely steady. The group went silent. 6 months ago, Linda said, "I couldn't hold a coffee cup without spilling it, couldn't write my name. The tremors were so bad I thought I had Parkinson's. 3 nights with this herb and they stopped." She pulled out her phone with those steady hands and showed us her screen, a sleep tracking app. I could see the graph from across the circle. The line had been flatlined near 0 for months, then suddenly spiked. 8.2 hours, 8.1 hours, 7.9 hours. "Holy shit," someone whispered. A car pulled into the parking lot. A Honda CR-V, newer than anything else here. A woman got out still wearing hospital scrubs, a stethoscope hanging around her neck. She was in her 30s, Korean-American, with her hair tied back in a practical bun. Even from 20 feet away, I could see the red in her eyes. "Sorry I'm late," she said, pulling on a mask as she approached. "Code blue at the end of my shift. Patient didn't make it." Her voice was flat professional, the tone of someone who'd learned to compartmentalize trauma. "I'm Sarah, Dr. Kim. I guess, though, that feels pretentious outside the hospital." "You're a doctor." The construction worker spoke for the first time. His voice had a slight accent, Mexican, maybe softened by years in California. "You're a doctor and you can't fix this." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "You know what medical school taught me about insomnia? Take some melatonin, practice sleep hygiene, try not to stress. They treat it like it's a choice, like we're just not trying hard enough to relax." She looked at Linda. "So yeah, I'm desperate enough to try folk medicine from Vietnam. Western medicine has done exactly nothing for me except rack up a prescription history that'll probably get flagged when I renew my medical license." Linda reached into her tote bag and pulled out small pouches, each one made of red cloth tied with string. She handed them around the circle, one to each person. When my turn came, I took the pouch carefully. It was surprisingly heavy for its size and warm, like it had been sitting in sunlight even though we were in the shade. "My sister-in-law sent these from Vietnam," Linda explained. "Her grandmother lived in the Central Highlands near a city called Dalat. She was a traditional medicine practitioner, used this herb for 40 years. What's it called? Sarah asked, already opening her pouch to examine the contents. Ngu Mong Tao. It translates to something like dream sleep herb. It grows wild in the mountains, but only in certain areas. They harvest it during the full moon. I opened my pouch. Inside were dried leaves, dark green, almost black, crushed into small pieces. The smell hit me immediately, mint and eucalyptus, but underneath something else, something earthy and ancient that I couldn't identify. It smelled like a memory I'd never had, like nostalgia for a place I'd never been. Her grandmother died last week, Linda continued. Peacefully in her sleep, she was 93. Before she died, she told my sister-in-law to give these to the Americans who can't sleep. She said to tell us that the price of sleep is the dream. What does that mean? Nathan asked. Linda shrugged. Vietnamese can be poetic, might be metaphorical, might be a translation issue. My sister-in-law's English isn't great. Sarah was crumbling one of the leaves between her fingers, examining it with a physician's attention to detail. The texture is wrong for anything I recognize. The smell profile doesn't match any herb in the standard pharmacopoeia. She looked up. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying I have no idea what this is, and that should concern us. But you used it, the tattooed woman said. She had a barista's hand stained with old ink and coffee. Linda, you used it and it worked. It worked, Linda confirmed. Better than anything else I've tried. Better than Ambien, better than melatonin, better than the sleep clinic in Glendale that charged me $3,000 to tell me I had idiopathic insomnia. James looked up from his notebook. When he spoke, his voice had the measured quality of someone who'd spent a lot of time thinking. Eastern medicine operates on empirical evidence accumulated over millennia. The Western scientific method is only 200 years old and thinks anything it can't quantify doesn't exist. I trust this more than I trust Pfizer. How do we use it? I asked. My voice sounded strange to me, rougher than I remembered, like the insomnia had changed even that. Linda pulled out a piece of paper covered in Vietnamese script with English translations written below in careful handwriting. My sister-in-law wrote down her grandmother's instructions. There are 2 methods. First method, make tea. 1 teaspoon of the herb in hot water, steep for 10 minutes, drink 30 minutes before bed. That's the mild dose. And the second method, Nathan was leaning forward eager. You can smoke it. Roll it in paper like a cigarette, 3 to 4 puffs maximum. My sister-in-law said that's the stronger dose, that it works better. Linda paused. But there's a warning. The grandmother wrote, Kong duok di sha, nu de kwa dong mo, don't go far. If you see doors, don't open them. Silence fell over the parking lot. A police siren wailed somewhere in the distance, the eternal soundtrack of Los Angeles. Doors? The elderly Korean woman asked. Her English was accented but clear. What doors? I don't know, Linda admitted. It might be idiomatic. Vietnamese has a lot of sayings that sound strange in English. Or it might be part of the experience. Some herbs can cause vivid dreams. The important thing is it works. I've slept 24 hours in the last 3 nights. Real sleep. Deep sleep. The kind where you wake up and actually feel rested. I stared at the red pouch in my hand. The rational part of my brain, the part that had gotten me into college, that had kept me alive through 27 years of life, was screaming warnings. Unknown substance from a foreign country. No FDA approval, no clinical trials, instructions that mentioned seeing doors, whatever that meant. But the irrational part of my brain, the part that had been eroded by 6 months of insomnia until it was raw and desperate and willing to try anything, was already calculating. Tonight. I could try it tonight. What was the worst that could happen? I'd asked myself that question before. Usually right before making catastrophically bad decisions. Thank you, I said to Linda. Seriously, even if this doesn't work, thank you for trying. She smiled, and I saw tears in her eyes. We're family now, she said. All of us. Nobody else understands what this is like. How it feels to lie in bed for 8 hours and not sleep for 1 minute of it. How it feels to watch the sun come up and know you've failed again. We understand. That's worth something even if the herb doesn't work. The group murmured agreement. For a moment, standing in that parking lot in downtown Los Angeles as the sun set and the November chill crept in, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Fragile and probably foolish, but hope nonetheless. We talked for another 20 minutes, sharing stories, swapping Discord handles, making promises to update the group after we tried the herb. Sarah took photos of the leaves, said she tried to identify them through her hospital's pharmacology database. James wrote everything down in his notebook. Nathan kept asking questions about the smoking method, whether it was safe, what it would feel like. By 6:45, people started leaving. Work in the morning. Families waiting. The routines of life that continued even when sleep didn't. I was one of the last to go, standing with Linda and Sarah near Sarah's Honda. "Be careful," Sarah said to both of us. "Start with the tea method. 1 teaspoon, not more. And if anything feels wrong, chest pain, difficulty breathing, any kind of adverse reaction, go to an ER immediately." "You're going to try it tonight?" I asked Linda. She nodded. "I've been using it for a week. Tonight will be my 8th night. It hasn't stopped working yet." "And you?" I looked at Sarah. "Tomorrow," she said. "I'm on another 12-hour shift tonight, can't risk being impaired. But tomorrow I'm off for 3 days. I'll try it then and document everything." She paused. "Will you post in the Discord? Let us know how it goes." "Yeah," I said. "I'll post." We said our goodbyes. I walked back to my Civic, the red pouch heavy in my jacket pocket. The drive home to Koreatown felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body. I kept touching the pouch through the fabric, feeling the crunch of dried leaves, smelling that strange mint eucalyptus earth smell that seemed to seep through the cloth. By the time I got home, it was 7:30. The apartment building looked the same as always. Ugly 70s architecture, stained concrete, the Korean BBQ restaurant sign on the corner, flickering red neon. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, unlocked my door, and stepped into my 400 square feet of existence. The dripping had stopped. I noticed that immediately. The sound that had haunted me for the past 2 nights was gone. The apartment sat in normal silence, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant bass from someone's music downstairs. I set the pouch on my desk and stared at it. The smart thing would be to research it first. Google Ngu Mong Tao, see what came up. Check if anyone had died from it. Look for warning side effects, contraindications. Instead, I went to the kitchen and put water on to boil. The kettle rattled on the electric burner. I found a clean mug in the cabinet, rinsed it out. Measured 1 teaspoon of the herb from the pouch. The leaves crumbled easily, releasing more of that complex smell. The water boiled. I poured it over the leaves and watched them steep the water, gradually turning a dark, greenish-brown, almost black. Steam rose from the mug, carrying the scent through the apartment. I set a timer on my phone for 10 minutes and sat at my desk, watching the mug like it might do something unexpected. My laptop was still open from last night, the Discord server visible on screen. The #witching hour channel had new messages, people posting about their anticipation, their fear, their desperate hope that this would work. The timer went off. I picked up the mug and sniffed it. The smell was stronger now, almost overwhelming, that mint eucalyptus earth combination with something underneath that my brain couldn't quite process. It smelled old somehow, ancient. I took a sip. The taste was bitter earthy, with a sweetness underneath like honey that had been mixed with soil. Not pleasant, but not unbearable. I drank it slowly, forcing myself to finish the whole mug, even though my stomach churned slightly with each swallow. When it was done, I set the mug in the sink and checked the time. 8:47 p.m. The instructions said drink it 30 minutes before bed. I had time. I brushed my teeth, changed into sleeping clothes, boxer shorts, and an old t-shirt from a college I'd dropped out of. The routine was so familiar it hurt. 6 months of this same ritual, 6 months of lying down with hope that died somewhere around 2 a.m. At 9:15, I turned off the lights and got into bed. The apartment settled into darkness around me. Orange glow from the street filtered through my inadequate blackout curtains. I could hear the couple in 3B watching television, the murmur of Spanish dialogue through the thin walls. I waited for the heaviness to hit for sleep to finally come. Instead, something else happened. At 9:52 p.m., my body suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Not gradually, not gently, all at once, like gravity had doubled. I couldn't move my arms, couldn't move my legs. Sleep paralysis, some distant part of my brain recognized. I'd read about this, the temporary paralysis that sometimes happened during sleep transitions. But I wasn't asleep yet. Panic started to rise in my chest, but before it could fully form, I felt something else. A sensation like falling, but not down, sideways, through dimensions that didn't exist. My stomach dropped the way it does in an elevator, that weightless moment between floors. Then pop. Like a cork being pulled from a bottle, like pressure equalizing, like something releasing that had been held too tight for too long. I opened my eyes. I was looking at my ceiling. The water-stained acoustic tiles I'd stared at for 6 months, the familiar geography of my insomnia. But something was wrong. I wasn't looking up at the ceiling. I was looking down at it. From above, I was floating. No, not floating. I didn't have a body to float with. I was awareness without form, consciousness without container, existing in the space above my bed like smoke or thought or something that didn't have a name. And below me on the bed was my body. It lay on its back arms at its sides, chest rising and falling with slow, steady breaths, eyes closed, face peaceful. The face I'd seen in mirrors for 27 years, but I'd never seen it like this. Never seen myself sleeping because I'd never slept long enough for anyone to photograph it. Never had anyone who cared enough to watch me rest. I looked dead. No, I looked peaceful. For the first time in 6 months, the tightness around my eyes was gone. The lines of stress and exhaustion had smoothed out. I looked young again, the way I must have looked before the insomnia began its slow excavation of my life. Holy shit, I thought, except I didn't think it with words. It was pure concept, pure emotion transmitted through whatever I was now. This is real. This is actually happening. I tried to scream, but I didn't have a mouth. Tried to breathe, but I didn't have lungs. Tried to feel my heartbeat, but I didn't have a heart. Panic should have consumed me. Terror should have overwhelmed every thought. I was having an out-of-body experience, something that shouldn't be possible, something that violated every law of physics and biology I'd ever learned. But underneath the panic was something else, something I hadn't felt in so long I'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Peace. My body was sleeping. Finally, actually sleeping. And my consciousness had gone somewhere else, somewhere that didn't require rest, didn't feel exhaustion, didn't carry the weight of physical existence. I tried to move to test the limits of this new state. When I focused on the idea of movement, I drifted. Not walking, not flying, just existing in a different location based on intention. I moved toward my desk and suddenly I was there looking down at my laptop at the Discord server still open on screen. I tried to touch the keyboard. My hand. Except it wasn't a hand, just a suggestion of a hand, a shimmer in the air like heat rising from pavement passed through the keys. No resistance, no contact. I was a ghost in my own apartment. The door. I could leave, I could explore, I could go anywhere while my body rested. I moved toward the apartment door, expecting it to stop me, to be a barrier. Instead, I passed through it like it was made of smoke. The hallway beyond was different. The same geography, same doors with their apartment numbers, same flickering fluorescent lights, same stained carpet, but transformed. Everything had a blue tint, like I was seeing it through a filter. And it was silent, completely silent. No television sounds from 3B, no gaming from 4C, no traffic from Olympic Boulevard. Just silence. I moved down the hallway, phasing through doors when I wanted to see what was inside. Mrs. Rodriguez in 3D, the elderly woman who always smiled at me in the elevator, was asleep on her couch, her body curved uncomfortably, neck bent at an angle that would hurt when she woke up. The TV was still on, playing a telenovela to no one. I wanted to wake her to tell her to move to her bed, but I couldn't touch anything, couldn't make sound. I could only observe. I kept moving, driven by curiosity and something else, the sheer wonder of being conscious without exhaustion. This is what it felt like to be rested. This is what it felt like to exist without the constant weight of sleep deprivation. I found myself at the stairwell, then floating down, not walking, just descending through the space where the stairs were. The lobby, the front door, and then I was outside. Koreatown at night, but not the Koreatown I knew. Empty, completely empty. No cars on Vermont Avenue, no pedestrians on the sidewalks. The Korean BBQ sign still flickered red, but the restaurant below was dark. The 7-Eleven across the street had its lights on, but nobody inside. It was like everyone in Los Angeles had vanished except me. I moved up, testing the limits. 10 feet above the street, 20 feet, 50. I could see the whole neighborhood spreading out below me, the grid of streets, the rectangles of buildings, the pools of light from street lamps that illuminated nothing. And in the distance, downtown Los Angeles rose in vertical columns of glass and steel, lit from within, but empty. A city of lights without people, a stage set waiting for actors who would never arrive. This should have terrified me, this impossible empty world. But instead I felt something close to joy. For the first time in 6 months, I wasn't tired. I wasn't fighting to stay awake. I was simply existing, free from the tyranny of the physical. I flew, and it was flying now, real flight movement through three-dimensional space with nothing holding me back. I went west toward Santa Monica, watching the city scroll beneath me. The 10 freeway empty of traffic. The neighborhoods of Los Angeles passing below like a map. Everything frozen in this blue-tinted midnight. I reached the ocean in minutes. The Santa Monica Pier stood silent, the Ferris wheel motionless, the arcade dark. The beach stretched out in silver moonlight, except there was no moon. The sky was just void darkness without stars. I moved down to the beach, to where the waves should have been crashing. But the ocean was frozen. Not with ice, the water wasn't solid. It was just still caught mid-motion like a photograph. Waves that should have been falling were suspended in their curled droplets of spray, hanging motionless in the air. I reached toward the water with my non-hand. It passed through without resistance, without sensation. I couldn't feel the cold. Couldn't feel anything. That's when I heard it. Not heard exactly. Received. Transmitted directly into my consciousness without sound. A voice. Child. I spun around, or whatever the equivalent was in this form. Behind me on the pier stood a figure. Tall. Too tall. 7 feet at least, maybe more. Thin, with proportions that were almost human, but wrong in ways my eyes couldn't quite process. And it had no face, no features, just an outline of a head, a suggestion of a form like someone had drawn a person in the air with smoke and shadow. The voice came again, and I realized it was speaking Vietnamese. I understood it perfectly, even though my Vietnamese was limited to menu items and basic greetings learned from my parents. "You've gone far from your body." I tried to respond, but I still had no voice. The figure tilted its head. "You cannot speak here. Only receive. Listen carefully, because I will say this once. The thread that connects you to your flesh is thin. The farther you wander, the thinner it becomes, and if it breaks, you will not return." Terror finally found me. Real, primal terror. I thought of my body lying in my apartment 3 miles away, breathing, sleeping, waiting for me to come back. What if I couldn't find my way back? The figure raised one elongated hand and pointed east toward Koreatown. "Go, now, while the thread holds. You drank the herb, which means you took the mild dose. You can return. But next time, if you go this far, you may not be so fortunate." Next time, the words implied I would do this again. That this wasn't a one-time accident, but something I could repeat. "Who are you?" I tried to ask, though no sound came out. The figure seemed to hear anyway. "I am what watches the borders between sleeping and waking, between living and dying. I am old child, older than your country, older than the name of the place you call home, and I am warning you the herb you consumed is not medicine. It is a key. and you have unlocked a door that many before you have walked through and never returned from. Before I could form another question, the figure clapped its hands together. The sound, the first actual sound I'd heard since leaving my body, rang out like thunder, and I fell. Not slowly, not gently. I plummeted through space and dimension and time, the world blurring around me, the ocean and the pier, and the city all smearing together into streaks of color and light. I slammed back into my body with a force that knocked the breath from my lungs. My eyes flew open. I was staring at my ceiling, the real ceiling with all its stains and imperfections. My heart hammered in my chest. I had a chest again, had a heart, had a body that felt solid and real and mine. I sat up gasping. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. 6:47 a.m. I'd been asleep or whatever that was for almost 9 hours. 9 hours? I hadn't slept 9 hours in 6 months. I got out of bed on shaking legs and went to the bathroom. The mirror showed me my face and I barely recognized it. The puffiness around my eyes had lessened. The gray pallor had warmed to something closer to normal skin tone. I looked like I'd actually rested, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I grabbed my laptop and opened Discord. 47 notifications from the server. I clicked on #witching hour and scrolled through the messages, all posted between 3 and 5 a.m. I can't believe this. I slept 8 hours. I dreamed. I haven't dreamed in a year. Somnus Linda posted at 3:21 a.m. Yo, same. But I had the craziest experience. I think I left my body. Is that possible? Nate Brooks posted at 3:23 a.m. I need everyone to report in. This is unprecedented. Did everyone experience astral projection? Dr. Sarah K. posted at 3:31 a.m. I've been waiting 7 years to say this. I slept. And yes, I left my body. I was in Long Beach Harbor, saw the Queen Mary, every detail perfect. I've never been there at night, but I saw it. Temporal Drift posted at 3:45 a.m. I kept scrolling. Everyone who'd tried the herb last night had the same experience. Astral projection, out-of-body experiences, and everyone had slept, really slept for the first time in months or years. My cursor hovered over the text box. I should report my experience. The figure on the pier, the warning about going too far, the threat about the thread breaking. Instead, I typed, slept 9 hours, had vivid dreams, feel more rested than I have in months. This is real. I hit send and closed the laptop. The truth could wait. Right now, I just wanted to hold on to this feeling, the absence of exhaustion, the clarity of thought, the simple miracle of having actually slept. I made coffee and stood at my window watching Koreatown wake up in the morning light. The city looked different after 9 hours of sleep. Brighter, more detailed, like someone had turned up the resolution on reality. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Are you okay? Haven't heard from you? I smiled and typed back, I'm good, Mom. Actually slept last night, feeling better. Her response was immediate. Thank God. Your father and I were so worried. Come visit soon. I will. Love you. I meant it. For the first time in months, I felt like I might actually have the energy to drive to San Gabriel to sit with my parents, to be the son they deserved, instead of the exhausted ghost I'd become. The day passed in a blur of normalcy. I did deliveries, but everything felt easier. My hands didn't shake. I didn't have any microsleeps. Customers commented that I seemed more cheerful. I made $160 in 9 hours, my best day in weeks. That night I came home and stared at the red pouch on my desk. I'd used maybe 1/10 of it. There was enough for weeks, maybe months of sleep. The smart thing would be to use it sparingly, to treat it like the medicine it was. But I remembered how it felt to exist without exhaustion, to fly over Los Angeles. To be free from the physical limitations of my body. The warning echoed in my head. The farther you wander, the thinner the thread becomes. I should be afraid of that. I should take it seriously. Instead, I found myself wondering, what if I used more? What if instead of tea, I tried the other method, the stronger dose? My phone buzzed. Discord notification. I opened it. Nathan had posted in #witching hour. I went to Griffith Observatory in astral form, saw doors, floating doors in the sky, hundreds of them. Tomorrow night I'm smoking it instead of tea. I need to see what's on the other side. Dr. Sarah's response was immediate. Nathan, no. We don't know what those doors are. The warning said, don't open them. Nathan replied, you sound like my mom, lol. I'll be fine. See you guys tomorrow night in the astral plane. I stared at the messages, feeling cold spread through my chest. Tomorrow night. Nathan was going to use the stronger dose tomorrow night. I typed, Nathan, maybe wait. Let's figure out what we're dealing with first. But Nathan had already gone offline. Status last, seen November 21st at 11:47 p.m. I closed Discord and sat in the darkness of my apartment, the red pouch sitting on my desk like a question I didn't know how to answer. Outside, Los Angeles hummed with its eternal noise. Inside, the silence felt heavier than it should. And somewhere in the walls, too faint to be certain, I thought I heard it again. Drip, drip, drip. The news broke on a gray Monday morning while I was halfway through my third delivery of the day. My phone buzzed with the notification, and I almost ignored it, another LA Times alert about COVID numbers or election aftermath or some other piece of 2020's ongoing catastrophe, but something made me look. Pasadena man 23 found dead in apartment, cause unknown. My hands went numb. The phone nearly slipped from my grip. I pulled over on Western Avenue, hazard lights blinking, and read the article with a growing sense of horror that started in my stomach and spread through my entire body like ice water in my veins. Nathan Brooks was discovered by his landlord during a welfare check on Sunday morning. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of trauma or foul play. Brooks appeared to have died peacefully in his sleep. Preliminary examination revealed no obvious cause of death. The unusual detail noted by first responders, the deceased's eyes were open, and according to the coroner's initial report, could not be manually closed, a condition occasionally seen in cases of cadaveric spasm, though typically associated with sudden trauma rather than peaceful death. Family members report Brooks had been struggling with chronic insomnia but was otherwise in good health. Toxicology results are pending. The article included a photo. Nathan's Discord profile picture, skinny kid in a black hoodie, slight smile eyes that looked tired even then. I opened Discord with shaking hands. The Midnight Circle server was in meltdown. Dr. Sarah had posted at 9:47 a.m. Everyone stop using the herb immediately. Nathan is dead. This is not safe. This is not safe. James Morrison, we don't know it was the herb. Correlation isn't causation. He could have had an undiagnosed heart condition. Sarah. He tried to open a door in the sky on Friday night and died Saturday morning. You think that's coincidence? The tattooed barista username, inked Insomniac. What if he did open it? What if he couldn't come back? Silence in the chat for 3 minutes. Then Gamer Boy, 323. You mean like his soul is still out there? Linda posted at 10:15. My sister-in-law called me this morning. Her grandmother, the one who made the herb, died the same night we all first used it. November 20th at 3:47 a.m. In Dalat. Before she died, she told her daughter, the Americans found it. Tell them to be careful. The door I opened 50 years ago is still open, and something is walking through. I sat in my parked Civic reading and rereading those words. The door I opened 50 years ago is still open, and something is walking through. A car honked behind me. I was blocking traffic. I pulled back onto Western Avenue in a daze, my delivery forgotten, my mind racing through implications I didn't want to accept. Nathan was dead. Eyes open, couldn't be closed, like he was still seeing something, still looking at something on the other side. I made it through the rest of Monday on autopilot. Deliveries became mechanical actions my body performed while my mind was elsewhere. By evening, I'd made $83 and couldn't remember a single address I'd driven to. The Discord server continued its civil war throughout the day. Dr. Sarah and the older members argued for stopping immediately destroying the herb, never using it again. The younger members, the more desperate ones, argued that Nathan's death might be unrelated, that one data point wasn't enough, that going back to insomnia was worse than the risk. I didn't post. I just read, scrolling through hundreds of messages, watching the community I'd felt part of 3 days ago tear itself apart. That night, I stood in my apartment at 11 p.m. staring at the red pouch on my desk. I hadn't slept since Saturday, 36 hours awake and counting. The exhaustion was creeping back, that familiar weight settling over my thoughts like fog. I'd thrown away the pouch twice, walked it to the dumpster in the alley, dropped it in, walked away, then walked back, dug through the garbage until I found it, brought it back upstairs. The second time I'd made it as far as the dumpster before I turned around without even dropping it in. The problem was simple. I knew what awaited me without the herb: weeks of 20-minute nights, microsleeps while driving, the shadow people in my peripheral vision, the slow dissolution of my ability to function as a human being. Nathan had been reckless. He'd tried to open the doors, whatever they were. He'd used the stronger dose when Sarah had warned him not to. I would be careful. I would use the T method, the mild dose. I would stay close to my body. I wouldn't go to Santa Monica or anywhere far. Just a few hours of real sleep, just enough to function. I was lying to myself. I knew I was lying to myself. But the lie was easier than the alternative. At 11:47 p.m., I made the tea. 1 teaspoon of herb hot water, 10 minutes steeping. I drank it slowly, tasting that bittersweet earth flavor, feeling it warm my stomach. Then I lay down in bed and waited. The heaviness came faster this time. My body knew what to expect, had learned the pattern. Within minutes, I felt the weight, the paralysis, the sensation of falling sideways through dimensions that shouldn't exist. Pop. I opened my non-eyes and looked down at my sleeping body. Still there, still breathing. The thread that connected us was invisible, but I could feel it, a tether running from wherever I was to the flesh lying peacefully below. I moved through my apartment, checking that everything was the same as Saturday night. The blue tint, the silence, the sense of existing in a world adjacent to reality. I phased through my door into the hallway. Empty. Silent. I moved down the stairs through the lobby outside. Koreatown spread before me in its frozen nocturnal state. No people. No movement. Just the city as stage set waiting. I told myself I would stay close. Just explore the neighborhood. Maybe float up high enough to see the Hollywood sign, then come back. But once I was airborne, once I felt that freedom from gravity and exhaustion and physical limitation, staying close became impossible. I flew east toward downtown. The towers of glass and steel rose like monuments to a civilization that had temporarily vanished. I flew between them, through their corridors, into their empty offices, where computers sat dark and papers lay scattered on desks abandoned since March, when COVID sent everyone home. I found myself at City Hall, its white Art Deco tower reaching into the starless void. I ascended along its facade, rising higher and higher until Los Angeles spread below me in a grid of lights and darkness. And that's when I saw them. At first I thought they were windows, rectangular shapes floating in the air above the city, scattered across the sky like confetti frozen mid-fall. But as I moved closer, I realized what they were. Doors. Hundreds of them. Thousands, maybe. Wooden doors, metal doors, ornate carved doors, simple modern doors, all freestanding in the air with nothing around them, no walls or frames, just doors hanging in space at various heights and angles. The ones Nathan had mentioned. The ones the warning had said not to open. I should have gone back right then, should have returned to my body while I still could. But I was transfixed. I moved closer to the nearest door, maybe 50 feet away. It was wooden old with peeling green paint and a brass handle tarnished black. I could see scratches on its surface, where patterns around the handle, where countless hands had gripped it over years or decades. Where did it lead? What was on the other side? The urge to know was almost physical. I drifted closer. 40 feet, 30 feet. The door seemed to pull at me, not with force, but with promise, with the whisper of secrets, of knowledge, of answers to questions I didn't know I was asking. 20 feet. Stop. The word crashed into my consciousness like a physical blow. I recoiled, spinning to find the source. The figure from Santa Monica Pier stood behind me. The tall, thin, faceless thing that had warned me before. But now it wasn't alone. There were others. dozens of them appearing in the air around me, materializing from nothing. All tall, all thin, all featureless. They formed a circle, and I was at its center. The first one, I thought of it as the Watcher, though I had no name for it, moved closer. "I warned you." The words came in Vietnamese, again transmitted directly into my understanding. "I told you not to go far. Yet here you are farther than before, reaching for doors you should not touch." I tried to explain that I wasn't going to open it, that I was just looking, but I still had no voice. "You cannot speak here," the Watcher said, as if reading my thoughts. Perhaps it could. Perhaps in this place thoughts were as visible as bodies. But you can listen. So listen well, because this is the last warning you will receive. The circle of figures tightened. I had nowhere to go. The herb you consumed is not medicine, it is not healing. It is a key forged 500 years ago by a shaman in the mountains of Vietnam. He created it from 108 plants, mixed with the blood of those who starved to death and the ash of those who drowned. His purpose was to breach the barrier between the living world and the spirit world, to allow the living to walk among the dead and retrieve lost souls. The Watcher gestured toward the doors. "These are the result, doors created by every person who used the herb and went too far. Each door is a hole in the fabric of reality, a wound that never heals, and beyond them lies the labyrinth between worlds, the place where lost souls wander when they cannot return to their bodies." I looked at the doors with new horror. Hundreds of them, thousands. 500 years of people who'd used the herb, who'd gone too far, who'd punched holes in reality itself. "Some return," the Watcher continued. "Most do not. The ones who return are changed, marked. The boundary between their flesh and their spirit becomes thin, permeable. They can never fully be in one world or the other again. And each time they sleep, they risk falling through entirely." The Watcher pointed at me. "You have used the herb twice, the mild dose both times. If you use it again, especially the stronger dose, you may not return, and your body will die slowly from dehydration and starvation, while your consciousness wanders the labyrinth forever. Like the boy Nathan, like the grandmother in Vietnam, like thousands before them." "Then why?" I managed to think the question so hard it felt like shouting. "Why does the herb still exist? Why didn't someone destroy it?" "Because sleep is precious to those who cannot have it. And the shaman who created it knew that desperation makes people foolish. He wanted to populate his labyrinth with souls. He wanted companions in the place between life and death, so he created the herb and let it spread, knowing that insomniacs would find it and use it and feed his labyrinth with their consciousness." The Watcher moved closer until its faceless head was inches from where my face would be if I had one. "Go back now, to your body, before the thread breaks, and never use the herb again. Destroy what remains. Warn the others. Close the doors we cannot close. This is your only chance." The other figures began to move, herding me away from the doors, pushing me with their mere presence toward the east, toward Koreatown, toward my apartment. "Wait," I tried to think. "What are you? What gives you the right to warn me?" The Watcher paused. "We are what remains of the shaman's first test subjects, the ones he tricked into using the herb before he knew what it would do. We cannot return to our bodies, they died centuries ago. We cannot move on to whatever comes after death we are trapped between. So we watch, we warn. We try to stop others from making our mistake. Sometimes we succeed, usually we fail. Desperation is stronger than wisdom." With that, it clapped its hands together, that same thunderous sound, and I fell. But this time I didn't land in my body. I landed somewhere else. I opened my eyes, except I didn't have eyes. But I was seeing and found myself standing, not floating, standing, on concrete. The space around me was wrong, all wrong. I was in a corridor made of rough gray concrete walls, rising at least 20 feet high on either side. The ceiling was invisible, lost in darkness above. The floor beneath my feet, and I had feet again, or something like them, translucent and gray, was cold concrete. There was light somehow, though no source for it. Everything was visible in a dim, even illumination that seemed to come from the air itself. And it was silent, completely silent. When I tried to call out, no sound emerged. This wasn't Los Angeles. This wasn't Earth. This was the labyrinth. I spun around looking for a way out, for a door or exit or any indication of how to escape. But there were just walls. Concrete walls extending in both directions into darkness. Panic rose in my chest like a living thing. I ran in one direction, my feet making no sound on the concrete. My breathing, I wasn't breathing. I didn't need to breathe. But the habit of panic breathing persisted, making no sound either. The corridor stretched forever. No doors, no windows, no features except the occasional crack in the concrete or water stain streaking down from above. I ran until the concept of distance became meaningless, until I couldn't remember how long I'd been running, and still there was just corridor. Finally, I stopped leaning against a wall, trying to think. The watcher had said there was a way out. A real gate, not like the false doors floating above Los Angeles. Find the heart of the labyrinth, and there would be a gate that led back. But how long would that take? How much time was passing in the real world while I was here? The watcher had said something else, something about time being different here. 1 hour here is 1 day there. If that was true, if time moved differently, then every hour I spent in the labyrinth was a day my body went without food or water, a day closer to death. I had to move, had to find the heart, had to get out. I picked a direction they both looked the same and started walking. The corridor opened into a room after what might have been 10 minutes or an hour. I had no way to measure time here, no heartbeat to count, no breathing to mark rhythm. The room was maybe 30 feet square, the walls, the same rough concrete. And in the center stood a tree. The tree was wrong in every way. Its bark was black, completely black and smooth like polished stone. It had no leaves, but its branches moved slightly as if in a breeze that didn't exist. The roots broke through the concrete floor in thick coils, except the floor was somehow both concrete and dirt at the same time, layers of reality bleeding together. I moved closer, drawn by morbid curiosity. That's when I saw the faces. They covered the trunk, human faces pushing out from the bark like they were trapped inside the tree, trying to break free. Eyes closed, mouths open in silent screams. I took a step back, revulsion flooding through me. One of the faces opened its eyes. It looked directly at me. Its mouth moved, trying to form words. I couldn't hear anything, but I could read the lips. Get out. Get out while you still can. Don't go deeper. Then all the faces opened their eyes. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all staring at me with expressions of such profound despair that I felt it like a weight on my chest. One face looked familiar, young, thin, black hoodie somehow visible in the bark. Nathan. His mouth moved. I opened the door, David. Don't make my mistake. Turn back. I ran from the room back into the corridor, my mind refusing to process what I'd seen. Nathan was in the tree. Nathan's soul or consciousness or whatever he was, now trapped in bark, screaming silently for eternity. The corridor continued. I had no choice but to follow it. The next room was worse. It was a living room, Vietnamese style with low furniture and an altar in the corner. Incense burned in holders, the first smell I'd encountered in the labyrinth, sweet and cloying. Fruit sat in bowls as offerings. Photos of ancestors hung on the walls. And sitting on the couch were my dead relatives. My grandmother who died when I was 22. But young in her 40s, wearing the AO dye she'd been married in. My grandfather, who I'd never met because he died before I was born. My uncle, who'd crashed his car on the 10 freeway in 2019. My aunt, who'd died of COVID in March 2021, of the early deaths before we knew how to treat it. They sat perfectly still, staring at me. Then my grandmother stood. Her movements were fluid, too fluid, like she was floating rather than walking. She extended her hand toward me. Vena, David. Come home, David. Her voice was exactly as I remembered it, warm and loving. Banyokan. Grandma missed you. Every fiber of my being wanted to go to her. Wanted to feel her arms around me one more time. Wanted to tell her I was sorry for dropping out of college, sorry for disappointing her, sorry for not being the grandson she'd hoped I'd be. I took a step forward. My uncle's head rotated. Not his body, just his head, turning 180 degrees while his body remained facing forward. His neck twisted impossibly, tendons standing out like cables. His face was calm, pleasant. But the wrongness of it, the violation of basic human anatomy, made my stomach lurch. Dung tin ba ai, he said from his backwards head, don't trust her. De kong pai ba kan. This is not your grandmother. As he spoke, all four of them stood and began walking toward me. Their feet didn't touch the ground. They floated, moving in perfect synchronization like puppets on the same set of strings, and as they moved, their faces began to change. The features melted like wax, running down their skulls in streams of flesh-colored liquid, revealing something underneath. Something without features, without humanity, just blank smoothness where faces should be. I ran. The corridor accepted me back, and I sprinted through it, my silent footfalls eating distance that might or might not be real. I lost track of how many rooms I passed. Each one was a fresh horror, a new violation of reality and sanity. A room where a dog blind covered in cataracts walked in endless circles, hitting the walls with a thud and turning over and over, trapped in a loop it couldn't break. A room with a microscope on a pedestal. When I looked through it, I saw not cells but entire galaxies. And when I focused on one, I saw civilizations rise and fall in seconds, entire species being born and dying before my non-existent eyes. And one of them looked up and waved at me before its planet was consumed by its dying sun. A room with a television playing a Russian children's show, except the puppets had faces with too much detail, skin with pores and wrinkles stretched over foam, and they spoke directly to the camera, to me, saying, "We see you, the gray man, we see you watching." And the screen showed me from an angle that couldn't exist, showed the translucent gray form I'd become, and showed something else standing behind me, tall and thin and reaching for my neck. I didn't look behind me. I just ran. Eventually, after hours or days or years, I had no way to know, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling rose at least 100 feet above, and for the first time I could see it. Water dripped from cracks in the concrete, the first sound I'd heard besides my own attempts at noise. The drops hit the floor with echoes that suggested impossible distances. The floor was flooded. An inch of black water covered the concrete, spreading out in all directions, and in the center of the chamber was a pool, deep. The water was absolute black, like a hole punched through reality into void. Around the pool stood the doors, the same doors I'd seen floating above Los Angeles. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, standing upright in the water with no walls or supports, just freestanding doors waiting to be opened. And beyond the pool, on the far side of the chamber, I saw it. The gate, not a door, a gate. Stone archway, ancient, covered in symbols that might have been Vietnamese or might have been something older. Light emanated from it, real light, golden and warm, the first warm thing I'd encountered in this place. That was the way out. But between me and the gate was the pool. I approached the edge carefully. The black water looked bottomless. I couldn't see an inch below the surface. As I watched, a face appeared in the water. Pale, bloated eyes, white. Then another. Then dozens. Hundreds. They pressed against the underside of the surface like it was glass mouths, opening and closing, soundlessly, hands reaching up. The drowned souls. The ones who'd fallen into the labyrinth and couldn't find their way out. Trapped in the pool forever. I had no choice. I stepped into the water, cold, the first temperature I'd felt since entering the labyrinth. Bone-deep, marrow-freezing cold that made my non-existent teeth chatter. The water reached my ankles, my knees. Hands grabbed at me from below, fingers wrapping around my calves, trying to pull me down. I kicked free and kept moving. The water reached my waist. The faces in the water began to surface around me, breaking through like corpses rising from a grave. Their hands reached for me, their mouths open, showing throats full of black water. I pushed through them, swimming now, fighting toward the far edge. The gate was maybe 50 feet away. Something grabbed my ankle and yanked hard. I went under. The water was worse below the surface. Thick, viscous, tasting of rotten earth and time. I couldn't breathe. I didn't need to breathe, but my body's instinct was to panic anyway, to fight for air that wouldn't come. Hands pulled at me from all directions, dragging me down. I looked into the depths and saw it. Something massive, coiled at the bottom of the pool, impossibly large, too many limbs or appendages or whatever they were. And eyes. Dozens of eyes opening one by one, all focusing on me. It began to rise. Pure terror gave me strength I didn't know I had. I kicked viciously, breaking free of the hands, and shot toward the surface. I broke through, gasping out of habit, and swam frantically toward the edge. 20 feet, 15, 10. A tentacle, or what looked like a tentacle except it was made of water and corpses woven together in a grotesque rope, burst from the pool behind me and wrapped around my leg. It pulled. I grabbed for the edge, my fingers finding purchase on the stone, and held on. The tentacle pulled harder. I could feel my grip weakening, feel my legs stretching, feel the connection between my upper and lower body beginning to tear. Looking down, I saw the wound. The place where the tentacle gripped me was torn, showing not blood but something underneath, a shimmer, a glimpse of the thread the watcher had mentioned, the connection to my physical body. If the tentacle tore through that thread, I would be trapped here forever. On the stone archway above me, I saw words carved in Vietnamese, Jia Kua Su Tro Vela Su Hi Sin. The price of return is sacrifice. I understood. To pass through the gate, I had to give up something, had to leave something behind. I reached into the pocket of my translucent form, and somehow impossibly there was something there. My grandmother's wedding ring. The one she'd given me before she died, the one I'd worn on a chain around my neck every day since. I'd forgotten I was wearing it. But here in this place it existed with me. The tentacle pulled harder. My fingers were slipping. I looked at the ring. My last physical connection to my grandmother. The only thing I had left of her. "I'm sorry, Ba," I thought, and threw the ring into the pool. The tentacle released immediately. It withdrew into the depths, and the pool went still. I pulled myself out of the water and crawled toward the gate, my leg throbbing with pain that shouldn't be possible in this form. The archway loomed above me. The golden light beyond it was warm, inviting, promising escape. I reached out and touched the light. The world exploded into brightness. I fell through space and time and dimension, images flashing past my apartment, my sleeping body, the Discord messages, Linda crying over Nathan's death, the shaman from 500 years ago, looking at me and smiling, knowing his trap had worked again. And a voice, the Watcher's voice, echoing through everything. "You survived, few do, but the boundary is thin now. You left your mark in the labyrinth, and it left its mark on you. Every time you sleep, you risk returning. The gate is open, and it will never close." I slammed back into my body with a force that felt like it should have broken bones. My eyes flew open. I was staring at my ceiling, the real ceiling, water-stained and familiar. I tried to sit up and screamed. Actual sound this time, my voice raw and broken. Everything hurt. My muscles felt atrophied, my joints stiff, my mouth dry as sand. I managed to roll onto my side and grab my phone from the nightstand. The screen was blinding. The battery was at 3%. The date was November 27th. I'd been gone for 5 days. 5 days in the labyrinth had been 5 days in the real world. The Watcher had lied, or I'd misunderstood, or time worked differently depending on how you entered. I stumbled to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. I looked like a corpse. My cheeks were sunken, my eyes surrounded by deep purple bruises. I'd lost at least 20 pounds. My lips were cracked and bleeding. My hair was greasy and matted. I looked like I'd been dead and come back. I turned on the faucet and drank directly from it, gulping water until my stomach cramped. I splashed water on my face, trying to process what had happened. 5 days. My body had been lying in bed for 5 days while my consciousness wandered the labyrinth. I should be dead. I should have died from dehydration on day 3 at the latest. But I was alive. Barely, but alive. I made my way back to my room and found my phone charger. As the phone powered back up, notifications began flooding in. Missed calls, text messages, Discord alerts, hundreds of them. I opened Discord. The Midnight Circle server had been deleted, just gone, like it had never existed. But my DMs were still there. From Dr. Sarah, dated November 24th. David, if you're reading this, Linda is dead. Found in her apartment yesterday. Same as Nathan. Eyes open. Coroner said severe dehydration and starvation, but cause of death unknown. She'd been dead 4 days before anyone found her. I think she got trapped like Nathan. I'm flushing my supply. Please respond if you're alive. From James Morrison, dated November 26th. I made a terrible mistake. I tried to find you, smoked the herb, went to the labyrinth, saw you there swimming in black water, tried to call out but couldn't. When I woke up, only 2 days had passed. You were in there longer. I don't know if you're coming back. I destroyed all my herb. This has to end. I typed with shaking hands. I'm back. I'm alive. Barely. Then I went to my kitchen. The table was covered with cups, teacups. At least a dozen of them, all with residue of the herb at the bottom. I didn't remember making those. Then I saw the notebook. My notebook sitting open on the table. My handwriting, but shaky, almost illegible. I read what I'd written day 3, I think. Hard to tell. He's still in there. I can feel him. Far away. I keep making the tea. Trying to pull him back. Don't know if it works. Body is weak. Need food but can't leave. What if he comes back and I'm not here? Day 5. Saw him in the mirror. Behind me. Gray. Translucent. He was trying to say something. Couldn't hear. Made more tea. Drank it. Felt him closer. Day 7. This morning. I see the apartment different now, like 2 places overlapping. This one and the concrete one. The walls are bleeding through. I think he's coming back, or I'm going there, or both. If I die, tell Mom I'm sorry. The last entry was dated this morning. I stared at the words. While my consciousness had been in the labyrinth, my body had been, awake, acting on its own. Making tea, writing notes, trying to maintain the connection. I didn't remember any of it. I looked down at my ankle where the tentacle had grabbed me. There was a mark. Faint, barely visible, but there. In the shape of a handprint. Gray against my skin. I touched it and felt cold. The same bone-deep cold from the black water. The mark was permanent. A scar from a place that shouldn't exist on a body that had somehow survived its consciousness being gone for 5 days. I found the red pouch on my desk, still half full, enough for weeks of use. I picked it up, walked to the bathroom, and dumped the contents into the toilet. Watched the dark leaves swirl in the water. My hand hovered over the flush lever. The exhaustion was already creeping back. I could feel it in my bones, that familiar weight. Without the herb, I would go back to insomnia, back to 20-minute nights, back to the slow dissolution of my sanity. But with the herb, I would go back to the labyrinth, eventually, inevitably. The Watcher had said the boundary was thin now. Every time I slept, I risked falling through. I flushed the toilet and watched the herb disappear. Then I walked to my bed and lay down. I was exhausted. Truly exhausted in a way I hadn't been in 6 months. My body needed rest, real rest. But I was terrified to close my eyes. Because I knew what might be waiting in the darkness, the concrete corridors, the rooms full of horrors, the black water and the thing that lived in it, and worse, the knowledge that Nathan and Linda were still there, trapped, wandering, lost forever in a place between life and death. I lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, and after a few minutes I heard it. Drip, 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 coming from the walls. The same sound as before. But now I knew what it was. It was the labyrinth, calling me back. 3 weeks after I came back from the labyrinth, I still couldn't sleep without fear. Not that I had much choice in the matter. The exhaustion would build and build until my body simply shut down consciousness, flickering out like a candle in wind, and then I'd be somewhere else. sometimes my apartment, sometimes the streets of Los Angeles. Sometimes, and this was what terrified me most, standing in a concrete corridor that shouldn't exist, feeling the walls press in around me like the labyrinth was breathing. I'd wake up gasping, checking my phone to see how much time had passed. Sometimes minutes, sometimes hours, once an entire day. My body was recovering slowly. I'd regained 10 of the 20 pounds I'd lost, though my face still had that hollow look, like someone had carved out the unnecessary parts and left only the essential framework. The doctors at the urgent care clinic I'd finally visited had run tests and found nothing wrong except severe malnutrition and dehydration. They'd asked questions I couldn't answer truthfully. No, I hadn't been doing drugs. No, I hadn't been fasting for religious reasons. Yes, I'd just forgotten to eat for 5 days. They didn't believe me, but they couldn't prove anything else, so they'd sent me home with instructions to eat regularly and follow up with my primary care physician. I'd nodded and thrown away the paperwork on my way to the parking lot. What was I supposed to tell them? That I'd been trapped in a dimension of concrete and horror while my body operated on autopilot, making tea and writing desperate notes to itself? That 2 other people had died from the same condition, their souls lost in a place between worlds, while their bodies slowly starved. The rent was 3 months overdue now. My landlord had stopped being patient. The eviction notice was taped to my door, bright yellow paper with black text that gave me 30 days to vacate. I'd stopped doing deliveries. Couldn't trust myself behind the wheel anymore, not when I might black out at any moment and wake up somewhere else. The money I'd saved was almost gone. Another 2 weeks and I'd be homeless. But that wasn't what kept me awake at night. What kept me awake was the dripping. It never stopped now. Every night at 3:47 a.m., I'd started noting the exact time because it was always 3:47 the dripping would start. From the walls, from the ceiling, from inside the structure of the building itself. I'd checked for leaks dozens of times. Called the landlord who'd sent a plumber who'd found nothing. The plumber had looked at me with concern and suggested I might want to talk to someone, maybe get some help. And I'd thanked him and closed the door and sat on my floor with my hands over my ears, still hearing that sound. Drip, drip, drip. The sound of the labyrinth's black water. The sound of the pool where the drowned souls waited. And sometimes late at night I'd hear other sounds. Footsteps in the hallway outside my door. Slow, deliberate, heavy. They'd stop outside my apartment and just wait. I'd look through the peephole and see nothing. But I'd hear breathing on the other side, patient and endless. My phone buzzed. I picked it up from where it sat charging on my desk. Discord notification. Not from the midnight circle. That server was gone, wiped from existence like it had never been. But I still had my DMs with the survivors. Dr. Sarah had messaged, "David, I need to tell you something. I quit my job at Cedars-Sinai. Couldn't handle it anymore. Every corridor in that hospital looks like the labyrinth corridors. Same gray walls, same fluorescent lights, same concrete texture. I had a panic attack during a code blue last week. Patient was dying and all I could see was that tree with the faces in it. I'm working at a clinic now. Day shifts only. Pediatrics. Nothing that reminds me of death." "How are you holding up?" I typed back. "Not great. The sounds haven't stopped. The dripping, I hear it every night. And sometimes I see things in mirrors, like I'm not alone in my reflection." Her response came quickly. "Same." "I see them too, the gray figures, the ones the watcher said were trapped souls. I think once you've been there, you can see both worlds overlapping. The boundary is thin for us now. We're marked." Another message, this time from James Morrison. "I'm moving to Colorado next week. Bought a cabin in the mountains, as far from concrete and cities as I can get. I can't stay in Long Beach. Too many buildings, too much gray. I wake up every night convinced I'm still in there. My wife thinks I've lost my mind. Maybe I have. Maybe we all have." I scrolled through other messages from the survivors. The ones who'd used the herb but had only experienced the mild astral projection, not the full labyrinth. Even they were struggling. the tattooed barista inked insomniac. I see Nathan sometimes, at the coffee shop where I work. He's standing in the corner, gray and translucent, staring at nothing. Nobody else sees him, just me. I tried to talk to him once, and he looked at me and his eyes were empty, like there was nothing behind them anymore. I think he's still trapped in the labyrinth, and sometimes he leaks through. Gamerboy 323. I can't play video games anymore. Every loading screen just black with a cursor reminds me of the void. Every corridor in every game looks like those concrete hallways. I had to quit streaming. My followers think I just disappeared. Part of me did. Part of me is still there. I closed Discord and set my phone down. Outside my window, Los Angeles was waking up. December morning light, pale and cold. Saturday, the 21st. 1 month since I'd first used the herb. 1 month since my life had ended and this half-existence had begun. I should eat something. I had been trying to maintain a routine breakfast, lunch, dinner, regular meals to rebuild my body. But food tasted like ash now. Everything did. Like some essential part of taste had been left behind in the labyrinth. I was heating water for instant oatmeal when someone knocked on my door. 3 sharp raps, too loud, too precise. I froze the kettle in my hand. Nobody knocked on my door. My parents called before visiting. The landlord just taped notices. I didn't have friends who dropped by unannounced. 3 more raps, same rhythm, same force. I set down the kettle and moved to the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the knocking came again. Right against the door, inches from my face. I stepped back. My heart was hammering, my hands shaking. "Who's there?" My voice came out hoarse. I barely used it anymore. No answer. I waited, counting my heartbeats. 1 minute, 2, 5. Silence. Finally, I unlocked the door and pulled it open. The hallway was empty. Fluorescent lights flickering, stained carpet, the smell of kimchi and pine sol. But on my doormat was a package. Brown paper wrapping, no address label, no delivery service logo. Just a package sitting there like it had always been there. I should have left it. Should have called the police or my landlord or just kicked it down the hallway and locked my door. Instead, I picked it up. It was heavier than it should be, and warm. Like it had been sitting in sunlight even though the hallway had no windows. I brought it inside and set it on my desk. Stared at it for a full minute before I found the courage to open it. Inside was a red cloth pouch, identical to the one Linda had given me, full of dried leaves that smelled of mint and eucalyptus and something ancient. And beneath the pouch was a note written in Vietnamese, Con gi da thot, nung kong ai thot duok, kong da mo, me kong kan them lin hon, con da duok chon lam ngoi dan duong, dong no, chia se no, dua nyun ngoi honden, de la mukdish con, dai la loin nguyen con. I translated it slowly, my Vietnamese rusty from years of not using it. You think you escaped, but nobody escapes. The gate is open. The labyrinth needs more souls. You have been chosen as a guide. Use it, share it, bring more people. This is your purpose. This is your curse. It was signed Ba Noi, grandmother. My grandmother had been dead for 5 years. I dropped the note like it had burned me. My hands were shaking so hard I had to clench them into fists. This wasn't possible. This was a prank, a sick joke, someone who knew about the herb and about my grandmother and was messing with me. But then I opened the pouch and poured out some of the contents. Mixed in with the leaves was something else, something small and metallic. My grandmother's wedding ring. The ring I'd thrown into the black pool as a sacrifice. The ring that should be at the bottom of the labyrinth, lost forever. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was the same ring. I knew every scratch on its surface, every imperfection in the gold band. I'd worn it around my neck for 5 years. On the inside of the band was an inscription I'd never noticed before. I held it up to the light, squinting at the tiny Vietnamese characters, Giac ngu la mon qua, kai chet la gia. Sleep is the gift, death is the price. The inscription hadn't been there before. I would have noticed. I'd looked at this ring hundreds of times, but now it was there, carved into the gold like it had always been. I dropped the ring on my desk and backed away from it. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. The dripping started. 3:47 p.m., now not a.m. The labyrinth was bleeding through at all hours. I grabbed my phone and opened Discord, typing frantically to everyone, "Did any of you get a package, red pouch? Has anyone else?" I stopped, because I just realized something. The note said I was chosen as a guide, to bring more people to the labyrinth, and I'd been about to warn everyone about the package, about the new herb that had appeared. But what if warning them was exactly what I was supposed to do? What if that's how it spread through warnings, through sharing the danger, through well-meaning messages that actually led more people to seek out the herb? What if I was already fulfilling my purpose without knowing it? I deleted what I'd typed and set down my phone. The apartment was silent except for the dripping. I looked at the pouch on my desk, at the ring, at the note in my grandmother's handwriting that couldn't be from my grandmother because she was dead. I should destroy it, burn it, throw it away, never touch it again. But I knew I wouldn't, because the insomnia was back. 3 hours of sleep in the last 2 days, and that sleep was full of nightmares of concrete and drowning. My body was breaking down again. The tremors had returned. The shadow people were back in my peripheral vision, and the herb was right there, promising rest. Promising escape from this waking nightmare, even if it meant risking the sleeping one. I knew it was a trap. I knew using it again might mean never coming back, but knowing something intellectually and having the strength to resist it are different things entirely. I made tea at 11:47 p.m., 1 teaspoon of herb, hot water, 10 minutes steeping. I told myself it would be the last time, just one night of real sleep, just enough to function, to think clearly, to figure out what to do next. I drank it slowly. The taste was exactly as I remembered, bitter earth and honey. Then I lay down and waited. The heaviness came, the paralysis, the sensation of falling sideways through dimensions that shouldn't exist. Pop. I opened my non-eyes and saw my body below me sleeping peacefully. And I realized with sudden terrible clarity that I'd made a mistake, because I wasn't in my apartment. I was standing in a concrete corridor. The labyrinth had been waiting. And this time I hadn't even left Los Angeles, hadn't wandered far from my body, hadn't done anything wrong. The labyrinth had simply reached out and taken me. The Watcher appeared in front of me, tall and thin and faceless. "I warned you," it said. "The boundary is gone. You cannot sleep without returning now. This is your existence, half in one world, half in the other, never fully in either. The curse of those who went too far." I tried to move to find the gate to escape, but the corridor had no end. It stretched forever in both directions. "Your body will wake in 8 hours," the Watcher said, "and you will return to it, for now. But every time you sleep, you will come here. Every single time for the rest of your life, however long or short that may be. This is your punishment and your purpose, to walk between worlds, to exist in the space where the living and dead overlap, to guide others here whether you mean to or not." The Watcher moved closer. "In your world, you posted something, didn't you, before you drank the tea? You wrote about your experience. You thought you were warning people." I had. Yesterday, in a moment of desperate need to process what had happened, I'd written everything down, posted it on Reddit, on r/no-sleep, thinking maybe if I shared the story, people would know to avoid the herb. 3,000 people read your story, the Watcher said. 47 of them are now searching for the herb. They think they can be careful. They think they can avoid your mistakes. They think they're smarter than you were. Horror washed through me. "You are the guide now," the Watcher continued. "Everyone you tell will be drawn here eventually. Everyone who hears the story will want to try. Desperation is contagious. And you, with your warnings and your fear and your detailed descriptions of this place, you are the most effective recruiter the labyrinth has ever had." "No," I tried to say. No sound came out, but the intention was clear. "Yes," the Watcher said. "This is how it works. This is how it has always worked. The shaman who created the herb 500 years ago, he was the first guide. He brought hundreds of souls here. Then they became guides. Then their victims became guides, an endless chain of the desperate leading the desperate into the place between life and death. The watcher gestured down the corridor. Walk. You have 8 hours. Use them well. Learn the paths. Learn the rooms. Because you will be here every night for the rest of your life. You might as well learn your new home. I started walking because there was nothing else to do. Behind me, I heard the watcher's final words. And when your body dies from old age or accident or simply giving up, you will not move on to whatever comes after death. You will stay here, permanently, like us, like Nathan and Linda and all the others who went too far. Welcome home, David Nguyen. Welcome home. I walked through the corridors, and with each step I felt myself becoming less real in the waking world and more solid in this one. I passed Nathan standing against a wall, gray and translucent, his eyes empty. I passed Linda sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth silently. I passed hundreds of other souls who'd been here for years or decades or centuries, all trapped in the labyrinth between worlds, all waiting for something that would never come. And I knew that eventually I would be like them. Eventually the thread connecting me to my body would snap, and I would be trapped here completely. The only question was how long. Hours passed, or days. Time didn't work right here. Finally, I felt a pull, the thread yanking me back. My time was up. I gasped awake in my bed. It was 7:47 a.m., 8 hours exactly. My phone was buzzing with notifications. I picked it up with shaking hands. The Reddit post I'd made had gone viral. 10,000 upvotes. Hundreds of comments. Where can I find this herb? I have insomnia too. Can you tell me more about how to use it? This sounds fake, but I'm desperate enough to try anything. And direct messages. Dozens of them. People asking for details, for sources, for help, finding the cure I'd described. I'd tried to warn them. I'd tried to save them. Instead, I'd condemned them, because that's what guides do. That's what the cursed do. They spread the curse even when they're trying to stop it. I looked at the red pouch on my desk, still half full, and I knew with terrible certainty that I would use it again tonight, and tomorrow night, and every night after that, because I couldn't stay awake forever. And the labyrinth was patient. It had waited 500 years. It could wait for me. Outside my window, Los Angeles woke up. People starting their days completely unaware that reality was thinner than they thought. That between sleeping and waking, between living and dying, there was a place made of concrete and horror where lost souls wandered forever. And I was going to send them there. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't help it. The curse had found me, and now I was the curse. I typed a response to one of the messages. Don't look for it, please. Whatever you do, don't. I stopped, because I knew that don't would only make them want it more. I deleted the message and closed the app. Then I lay back in bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the dripping in the walls. Drip, drip, drip. The sound of the labyrinth calling me home. Final note. Found by police during welfare check December 28, 2020. Subject David Nguyen, 27, discovered deceased in apartment. No signs of trauma. Appeared to have died in sleep. Eyes open, pupils fixed and dilated. Estimated time of death December 21st, approximately 4:00 a.m. Unusual findings. Severe dehydration and malnutrition despite evidence of recent meals. Apartment showed signs of occupancy, but also abandonment food in refrigerated dishes and sink, but thick layer of dust suggesting no one had been present for weeks. All mirrors in apartment were broken. Walls contained scratches in Vietnamese script. Translation provided by family. Let me out. The doors are everywhere. I can't wake up. It's always 3:47. Subject's laptop contained a detailed account of experiences with an unknown herbal substance. Browser history showed searches for astral projection death, Vietnamese death rituals, Hmong's sudden death syndrome, how to close spiritual doorways, am I already dead? Final browser activity. Reddit post published December 20th, 11:47 p.m., titled, I found a cure for insomnia, and it destroyed my life. Post received 47,000 views before subject's death. Post has since been removed by moderators for encouraging dangerous behavior, but archived copies continue to circulate. Toxicology report found no controlled substances. Unidentified plant material was discovered in apartment and has been sent to DEA for analysis. Preliminary botanical examination suggests Southeast Asian origin, possibly Vietnamese highland vegetation. Exact species classification pending. Note: this is the fourth death in Los Angeles County this month matching this profile. All victims Vietnamese American males, ages 23. 27 chronic insomnia sufferers died in sleep with eyes open. All had posted online about finding a cure before death. Possible connection under investigation. Additional note: during evidence collection, multiple officers reported feeling watched in the apartment. One officer reported hearing dripping sounds from walls despite building inspection confirming no water damage or leaks. Another officer reported seeing a gray figure in reflective surfaces that disappeared when viewed directly. Forensic psychologists suggested officers may have been influenced by subjects' written accounts and experienced sympathetic hallucinations due to the disturbing nature of the scene. Case closed, natural causes unexplained. File marked for review if similar cases emerge. End report. Addendum. Attached note found in evidence box handwriting does not match victims. Whoever reads this, you're looking for the herb now, aren't you? You've read the story and you're curious. You're thinking, maybe you can be careful. Maybe you can avoid the mistakes he made. You can't. The labyrinth is patient. It's been growing for 500 years and it will continue growing. Every person who reads about it, who seeks it, who uses it, they all end up in the same place, between the concrete walls, in the dripping corridors, with the drowned souls and the screaming faces and the doors that lead nowhere. Don't look for it. Don't think about it. Don't sleep. Because if you do, I'll see you there. We're all waiting. DN. Note: handwriting analysis inconclusive. Paper shows no fingerprints. Security footage shows no one entering evidence room between time of storage and discovery of note. Origin unknown.